All right, let's jump right into one of the biggest, oldest questions out there, divine providence. We're going to get into that classic tug of war between God's master plan and, our own freedom to choose.
I mean, it really all boils down to this, doesn't it? Have you ever wondered about this? Are our lives already written out for us, like we're just actors following a script? Or are we actually the ones holding the pen, writing our own stories? This is the question that's really at the heart of everything we're digging into today. So, when you ask that big question, theology often points to this idea, divine providence. And what is that really? Well, it's the belief that God isn't some distant clockmaker who just wound up the universe and walked away. No, not at all. It's the idea that God is an active director, right here, right now, guiding the whole show toward a very specific ending.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we've got to start with the foundation, the core idea behind it all. This whole God's guiding hand thing, what does that actually look like? At its heart, it's actually pretty simple. The idea is that God has a plan, and he's in control. That's what theologians call God's sovereignty. It's the starting block for this whole conversation. It means nothing, and I mean nothing, happens by accident. From these huge, sweeping moments in history down to the tiniest little details, it's all part of a plan, unfolding with a purpose. Right. But the second you say total control, you immediately bump into this huge puzzle. It's a seeming contradiction that people have been wrestling with for literally centuries. And you see this idea all over Scripture, right? You get phrases like this one from Romans, according to his will. It really hammers home the idea that God is the one calling the shots, shaping events to fit his design. Seems pretty straightforward. Or is it? And yeah, that's the big but, isn't it? It's the question that just pops into your head right away. If God's plan is totally locked in and can't be stopped, then what about, me? Does my choice to have coffee this morning matter? What about my career path? Or any big moral choice I have to make? Where does my freedom fit into all of this? And this is where you can really see the tension. Look, on one side, you've got absolute sovereignty. God's plan is unstoppable, history's ending is already written. But on the other side, you've got our actual everyday experience of human freedom. We make decisions. Those decisions have real consequences, and we feel responsible for them, right? So how on earth can both of these things be true at the same time? They seem to completely cancel each other out. Okay, so how do we even start to solve this puzzle? Well, the source material suggests that maybe God doesn't just work in one way. There might be a couple of different modes of operation. So let's look at two classic stories that show this in action. First up, a story that's a perfect example of God just stepping in. Direct action. You definitely know this one. It's the story of Jonah. And yeah, the whale. Or, to be more accurate, the great fish. So here's the play-by-play, and this is crucial. God gives Jonah a command. And what does Jonah do? He exercises his free will and basically says, no thanks. He literally runs in the opposite direction. But here's the thing. God's plan doesn't just fall apart. Nope. We get this massive divine intervention, a huge storm, the whole great fish thing, and Jonah gets physically turned around. So in the end, even though Jonah rebelled, God's purpose still happened. It's like human freedom met a divine override. Okay, now let's flip the script and look at a totally different way God's plan can play out. The story of Esther is so fascinating because, get this, God isn't even mentioned by name in the entire book, and yet it's seen as one of the best examples of divine providence. So our story starts with Esther. She's a Jewish woman who, through a crazy turn of events, becomes the queen of Persia. She's suddenly in this incredible position of power and influence right at a super critical moment. No burning bushes, no parting seas, just the right person, in the right place, at the right time. So when a plot emerges to wipe out her people, Esther doesn't get a direct message from heaven. There's no great fish coming to the rescue. She has to wrestle with the decision herself. She's terrified, but she chooses to use her power, her smarts, and her courage to do something. This is all her, using her own human agency. And guess what? It works. Through her own brave, risky, and completely free choices, her people are saved. God's purpose is fulfilled. But not by stomping on human will, but by working perfectly through it. It's a brilliant look at a much more subtle, indirect kind of providence. So, okay, we've got these two different playbooks, right? Direct intervention, like with Jonah, and this indirect guidance, like with Esther. So how do we put them together to solve our big puzzle? Well, this is where we get to the big aha moment of this whole idea. It turns out, maybe we've been asking the wrong question. It's not God's plan versus our freedom. The big insight here is that they can actually work together. They aren't opposites fighting each other, they're more like two parts of the same whole. They're complementary. And this is where we get a name for this idea, comprehensive providence. What does that mean? It's the concept that God is involved in everything, but his main way of working is through the normal flow of life, through the free choices of people, just like Esther, to steer history exactly where he wants it to go. So what does this mean for us? It means our freedom is totally real. Our choices really, really matter. But they happen inside a bigger reality, a framework that's shaped by God's ultimate purpose. I love this analogy. Think of it like a river. We are totally free to swim around, go left, go right, do the backstroke. But the river itself has banks, and it's flowing steadily in one direction, towards the sea.
Okay, this is all a really interesting theological puzzle for sure. But let's get practical. What's the takeaway? Why does wrapping our heads around this comprehensive providence idea actually matter in our day-to-day lives? Well, for starters, it really pushes back against a pretty common picture of God, The idea of the divine watchmaker, the God who built the world, wound it up, and then just took a step back to watch it tick, completely hands-off. And it swaps that out for something way more personal, a God who is intimately involved, weaving the threads of our choices, the good ones and, yeah, even the bad ones, into a bigger, beautiful tapestry of purpose. It paints a picture of a God who isn't far away and detached, but is right here with us, in the middle of all the messiness of our world. All right, so let's do a quick recap. We started with that huge puzzle, right? How can God be in total control if we have free will? Then we looked at two different ways God seems to work, the direct override in the story of Jonah, and the subtle guidance through Esther's free choices. And the solution we found is this idea of comprehensive providence. The concept that God's big plan doesn't erase our freedom, it actually works through it. And the biggest takeaway? It shifts our view from a distant creator to a God who is deeply personally engaged in the world. And so, all of this leaves us with one last big thought to really mull over. If you believe that there's a grand, overarching purpose to all of history, and you believe that your personal, everyday, free choices are the very tools used to bring that purpose to life, how does that change things? How does it change the way you look at your own life, your decisions, and the impact you can have on the world? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.